All right, welcome folks to the special City Commission meeting of November 5th. To the folks who are watching at home waiting, I apologize for the late start. We had a meeting before this that ran a little over, so we're going to jump right into it. And with that, I would like to have a motion to approve the agenda that was published.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Before we have a call to that, I want to recognize the absence of Commissioner Glanzer. She feels terrible for not being here, but she had a pre-scheduled trip down south that she couldn't get out of that. And with that, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Martin, would you please give us our invocation tonight? At the end of the invocation, if you would please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, we would appreciate it.
Let us pray. I am who you say I am. We praise the day you have provided for us. We ask for your blessings and guidance as we conduct the business of the evening. May we be an example of service, of selflessness, of harmony, of grace. We appreciate the sacrifice of your Son, and may we prove ourselves worthy. May anyone within the sound of my voice who has not come to know you take a step closer and know your blessings. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Now we have no presentations, but we will give 2-minute public announcements for anyone who has any non-controversial announcements. If you got a garage sale coming up you want to let us know about, anything like that, now's a great time. Hearing none, we also have nothing on the consent agenda, no public hearings, and we have one item on tonight's agenda, which is the interlocal agreement between Alachua County and the City of Newberry for purchase of the Canterbury Equestrian Center for use as the county's agricultural center. Before we launch into staff's presentation and the contract, I want to make it clear to the commission and those folks watching at home that while it may seem that tonight is a little bit rushed, I think that's more because of the previous meeting and just trying to make sure we try to stay on schedule. 90% of what's in the contract in front of you is exactly the same that you guys voted unanimously to approve at our city commission meeting 2 weeks ago, roughly at that time point. So the broad strokes, the substantive points are the same. You guys authorized the city manager and myself to go and negotiate with the county. We did that at a county meeting. Our city manager has done it with the county manager for the last week. And the proposal that our city manager is going to bring to you tonight is the product of all those negotiations. But again, we've been hashing out some fairly small points at this point to get to tonight. And with that, Mr. Manager, will you take it away, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you've indicated in the last couple of weeks, there's been quite a bit of a flurry of activity regarding trying to pull all this together. I feel very comfortable that we have addressed nearly every item. There's a couple of items that we're currently working through, but there's very little that hasn't been addressed, is under discussion right now. We have essentially agreement on it. We're trying to pull things together. I'll walk you through a brief presentation. Background, I won't spend any time there. We've seen this background on several different presentations by me, just the history of how we got there, and then going into what the Canterbury property offers in terms of the county's agricultural center. Location map just shows where Canterbury is in relationship to the rest of the world or the rest of Newberry. You can see it's immediately west of our proposed Ag Tech Park. You'll see as we go through the contract that there's the city is providing an additional 5 acres to the Canterbury site, and that's where the county extension offices will be. That's where it lies in relationship to the Ag Tech Park and to Canterbury. This was a conceptual rendering that we prepared with a consultant planner. Very similar. Kind of identified, by color shading where things would be parking, activity areas, and the county extension agent's office to the in the upper right. And then the Newberry's offer broken down into just 4 components, and it was approved by this board 2 weeks ago. There's $1 million towards the acquisition of the Canterbury Equestrian Center. We're also going to provide 5 acres of property adjoining Canterbury to be used for development as the county extension offices. We have an agreement with that property owner to purchase the 5 acres for $60,000 an acre. So that's a $300,000 expense to the city. We are working to put together the purchase agreement so that we can have that ready to go very quickly. The third part of the offer is that the city would provide funding to connect Canterbury to the city's water and sewer system. As you know, they're currently on well and septic, so we would get them connected. Moving forward, they would pay for their monthly utility expenses, and then we would waive building, permit, and development fees. So all told, Newberry's offer is either in real cash, in value, or in contribution, totals right at $1.5 million. The recommendation tonight that we're seeking is to authorize the mayor and/or the city manager to finalize the interlocal agreement consistent with the draft contract presented tonight with the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners for the acquisition of Canterbury Equestrian Center for use as the Alachua County Agricultural Center. So that's is not being moving forward. It won't be called the fairgrounds. It'll be called the Agricultural Center. But that's where the youth fair and those types of activities, all of the county's agricultural activities are slated to occur at this site and in this facility. So you all have in front of you a draft agreement, very clearly labeled draft across each page. And I'm going to tell you that 90% of it is exactly what you saw on Friday with the version that was sent out. And there are a few areas that we continue to work on. And I will kind of highlight for you a summary of important items as we go through this. In exchange for the county purchasing the Equestrian Center for a period of 15 years, the county agrees to construct the IFAS extension offices on the adjacent property, and the city will pay $1 million using Wild Spaces funds to the county. We'll do that in steps because of the way county's encountering some expenses. So we'll pay the first component of that pretty quickly within 15 days. That'll cover some of the costs the county is incurring to place a contingency on the property. And then once we start moving forward with planning, there'll be another advancement of funds. And then once we get to closing, 5 days prior to closing, we'll advance the balance of the $1 million. If at any point during that 15-year contract term, the county decides not to use this site as its agricultural center, they make a business decision, they're going to move it somewhere else, then they will refund the city a pro rata share of the $1 million, just 1/15 a year, kind of like a tire warranty.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
I would say, just for point of reference, that's fairly similar, analogous to the relationship we have with Champions, where we agreed for what period of years that it's going to stay a baseball facility. After that period of years has expired, the city would have the ability to do something else. But so that arrangement pretty much came out of looking at how we went about Champions.
That's exactly right, Mr. Mayor. We're going to acquire the 5 acres adjacent, and we're going to lease it to the county at $1 per year for 99 years, and it's going to be used as the county extension office site. The city will, again, as I've said, pay for the connections to the city's water and wastewater system. The city will waive all of its land use and approval fees, and probably the biggest thing that we've been discussing in the last several days has been whether the zoning at the current site is adequate to support all the activities out there, and we came to the conclusion that we need to either amend the PD or rezone. We're planning to amend the PD to make sure we lock down that all of the county's proposed uses will be acceptable for on-site, and that's why we've got a 270-day period to for that to occur. The county will allow the city to use either site, either the conference center component of the county extension offices or the agriculture center, a total of 5 times per year for not more than 10 days per year. The county has a blackout period that runs from January through May, and that's the time where they predict their highest amount of revenue to be coming in. We've negotiated with them that we could get one use in April, one Saturday in April, if 90 days out that there is that availability. So we wouldn't preempt a revenue-paying event, but if there's an open Saturday 90 days out, we could secure it. And that really is the high points of your 14-page document that's in front of you. Attorneys, you'll remember, attorneys get paid by the word.
I would,
I know I've seen the show.
I think that the main thing for us to think about is that we are agreeing to cover the costs. So if it doesn't make through at the rezoning, we will, and we're still working out whether we pay them back or we pay the upfront, they pay us back. It would depend on if either which party backed out. So that's the other.
So there's some
facets.
principles, Mr. Mayor, that you cannot contract to rezone property. And let's take a step back for a second. This property is zoned PD, which is a very flexible zoning category under our zoning code. It's likely, and this is going to be up to Michelle Lieberman, who's here tonight, the county manager, and it's going to be up to her legal staff to determine what zoning category they want to have on that property. But our discussions have been perhaps they'll continue to use the property under the existing zoning category, which is PD. They will have to file a site plan with us, and they will obtain a development order at some stage in this process, hopefully sooner than later. That whole process is going to take at least several months to get through. By the time they do their engineering and their site plan work and all of the necessary documentation they'll need in order to get that approval through the city, it's going to take a several-month period of process to go through. So it's not really contingent upon the zoning approvals that the $300,000, the downstroke that reimburses the county for the upfront expenses that they will have, such as architectural, engineering, or site plan work that they will be presenting to the city. It's not really contingent upon that. But if the city, for any reason, just simply backs out of this deal, then we incur the expenses that the county will incur in bringing this matter forward to get the zoning approvals. So that's the way the deal is structured. Now, conversely, if the county simply says we're not going to go forward with it, then they've got to reimburse the city for the $300,000. If for some reason neither party can go forward because of some problem that is related to the property, and the best way I could explain it is if there was some kind of geotechnical problem with the land, let's say it's just dotted with sinkholes and we just can't build on that land, again, highly unlikely, but neither party can go forward with a site plan approval because structurally it would be too expensive for us to improve that property and too expensive for the county, and both parties back out, then we're going to share the expenses on a 50-50 basis. So as your manager and your mayor just said, there's a lot of words that are dedicated to that principle that I just outlined. So that's the process that we're talking about. I think clearly in our negotiation with the county, the desire on the county's part is for the city of Newberry to have some skin in the game, and that's why there's a $50,000 contingency fee. And Mr. Weisman, who owns the underlying, his corporation owns the underlying dirt, is amenable to not having this property closed immediately. In fact, he's given us 9 months to do so. But he's saying, okay, I want a binder deposit. If I'm going to take this property off the market, I want you to put up $50,000 in order to tie this property down, that it's now off the market, and it's tied to this purchase and sale agreement with the county. So the $50,000 in many instances, if you look at this, is our sort of, so to speak, skin in the game. And it's highly unlikely under any set of circumstances that the city's going to get their $50,000 back. That's the way this deal is structured. And so, as the mayor said and your manager said, we've been working on this for some time now, and this is the product of those negotiations. I can go through it in more detail with you if you would like, but those are some of the nuances and important points that I want you to understand. If you vote to approve this, then this is our investment in seeing that this matter goes forward. If it goes bad, then we're going to lose $50,000. If it goes good, we're going to have $1 million into the deal. $300,000, the max of that $1 million, $300,000 will be used for architectural, engineering, and site plan approval processes that are necessary in order to get this project approved through you all in the site plan approval process. But that's the overall. I think your manager has done a good job of outlining the rest of the terms of the contract, and so I'm not going to go over those terms. I'm not going to do that on a page-by-page basis because you already have seen this document before, but I've given you now several of the changes to the document so that you're aware of what those changes are, and you're making an informed decision. If you want me or the manager to go over it on a page-by-page basis, just tell us and we'll summarize it and go over it as you feel necessary.
I think since most of the folks who are here tonight were here the first time, and since we have gone through this, if you've got questions, let's go straight to those questions instead of trying to do a page-by-page again, because we did that kind of at the last meeting. Commissioner Farnsworth, did you want to?
The $50,000 binder, does that go towards the $1 million
Yes,
part of ours? Okay.
it will be credited into $1 million. That's correct. I think you have a ready, willing, and able seller. You have a ready and willing and able purchaser. But lawyers look for what-ifs. We live in the what-if world. And so I need to point out to you that what if it doesn't close, what occurs, you know, those kind of things. I want to tell you the downsides to this agreement just in case it doesn't get closed.
Now that the upside to going through the planning and zoning, the rezoning process, is that gives us the opportunity to work out a lot of those questions that we had in our 15 talking points. Now we have the opportunity in the standard process to answer a lot of those questions in a much more professional way than trying to work them into the contract that we were trying to do before. So, any other questions on the proposal in front of you? Commissioner Martin?
I have a couple of points/questions I just wanted to clarify before we move forward. And one of them is kind of actually at the county manager, if you want to come up. And Carly and Alan, I have a question for you all also when you come. Ms. Manager, is it your anticipation at this point to engage the current staff at Canterbury as far as through some sort of management contract?
No, the county would manage the property.
Okay. Is there any anticipation of them being employed by the county or anything like that?
There was no, we have not had that discussion internally.
Okay.
The county would take over management of the property. One thing that we had agreed with the current owner is that we would honor, and of course, this kind of depends on the closing date, but we agreed to honor all contracts that were currently in place through the entirety of calendar year 2019 for any events that are already scheduled. So we had already agreed to continue with all of those book dates that they already had in place. Now, of course, we may not end up closing now until closer towards the end of 2019. So at this point, that may not be an important point in the contract. But even if we close earlier, we are going to honor all those.
Okay. I guess my follow-up point would that be, in the interest of disclosure, I've had a pretty healthy conversation with Carly and with her husband. I'm very good friends with Lee, who's the maintenance staff out there. They obviously know the property and pretty much christened the property ever since the beginning. And although I can't, force you to deal with them, obviously I think that is definitely in your best interest because of the longevity and the history they have of the property and knowing the industry. Okay, that was the one question. Oh, the other question I had was, is it anticipated that the city will have or that the county will have a single point of contact for us to send people to if they're interested in doing programming or there anything? And is there already kind of expectation of who or what department that's going to be going through on your end?
We have a position that was created when we were talking about a total venue.
Okay.
Fairgrounds manager, that was Ron Grommel, and he will continue to be the manager for this. Our intent
Okay.
was to continue to have him at this point manage this facility because we don't have a venue currently that we are constructing.
I gotcha. Okay. Okay, that's all I had. City manager, I had a question about, I know in the last meeting we talked about the 60-foot easement between Canterbury and the proposed IFAS 5 acres. Has that been addressed and kind of nailed down specifically?
It is not finalized, but we have a plan that we are pursuing.
Okay.
Property is owned by WEEC. Met with the owner of WEEC, and we proposed a way around what he's proposing. Around that strip of land, where he's going to transfer that to Stephen Davis, or really to the city, and then to Stephen Davis as part of our 5-acre acquisition. So we just need to encapsulate that in an agreement.
Okay.
Did you have a question for the Evans?
I did. You mind coming up? Admiral Carly. I just wanted to get your input on a couple of the points that I had brought up specifically, and if you had anything else that you wanted to really kind of drive home, I guess, so to speak. Not to put you on the spot, I know this wasn't prepared.
No. I really don't think there's a whole lot more. We sent a letter out to the staff and the commissioners for both the city and the county, kind of explaining how the equine industry works, and to kind of let you guys know that it's something that's going to have to be built back up. It basically, in essence, said that a lot of the people who have had contracts with Canterbury, the reason they've left is because there was no security there for them and their businesses. And with the county purchasing the facility, that's going to really change. And we think we can bring some of those people back on board. So with that said, any other questions you have, I think that's an important point to make, though, because it could turn into a profitable situation that could pay for itself in its maintenance, and maybe even
Not
the
be a
county,
burden to the county.
right? The county and the city recover some money. However that's structured, that's all up in the air. But
Yeah. I would only like to point out that considering, I appreciate you pointing out Lee Ferguson as the head maintenance man there, considering that he knows where every pipe and every wire and everything is on that property, it would be kind of foolhardy not to take advantage of that knowledge of his. So I appreciate you bringing that,
Yeah,
his
I mean-
name into the picture.
We've been there since the Canterbury actually was the brainstorm of my wife, and we've all been there since the first nail was put into place. We managed it and ran it for many years, and then it changed hands. So we do have, and we are not in any way trying to push ourselves into this situation by any means. We have 3 businesses. We're very busy, but we're open for just about anything and that we can do to help. And if the county was interested in talking to us, or you guys, we'd be willing to sit down and talk and see what's feasible, for us personally. And we just want to see the thing fly. And it's just going to be a great thing for, we already discussed the revenue that it brings in. I can't even imagine what the numbers are over the last 25 years that it's been in existence. Well, since 91, I guess. So,
Yep.
Which is important, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
I really appreciate the letter that you sent. I thought it made some great points that I hadn't considered. It's very similar, again, I don't want to keep comparing it to Champions, but one of the problems when you're dealing with having to schedule things a year, 2 years out, if you don't know you've got the facility 2 years from now, you can't do that. So I think that's one of the
Exactly.
reasons why, almost a universal feeling in town is that Canterbury could be more productive. And in every one of my conversations with county elected officials, they've said, well, can it be more productive? And I think absolutely everybody involved in this is going to be willing to sit down and have conversations, especially with the folks who've been running it for a while and pick
We
your brains.
could get you hundreds of people that would attest to that fact that they think in the equine industry, from professional trainers to people that are show production and management. So it's not just an opinion we have. it's
Don't go too far, because I think
Okay.
Commissioner Coleman may have a question for you guys
Absolutely.
as well.
So, do you see that maybe this will end up like Duval counties? That's, it's really on the other side of.
You mean Jacksonville?
Yeah, that one that's.
Jacksonville Equestrian Center.
Yeah,
So
that place is
We
huge.
actually produce shows
We actually
there
do a
at that
couple shows
facility.
at that
Yeah.
facility. And what do you mean when you say like it?
I
In
mean,
in what regard?
It looks like, every time I'm heading to see my sister, that place is packed
Yeah.
Yes.
on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And when is the dates? Is it like the dates that are blacked out? Those are usually, it's not during the winter time and stuff. Is that how?
So the horse show season really runs its heaviest from January through May, because we bring a lot of people down from up north that want to get out of the snow. And so the season in Florida that's when it's the heaviest. In the summer, then Alan and I have produced quite a few summer shows to kind of keep the momentum going, and they've built, and so we have a little bit of a summer season. The fall, the last few years, the fall's always been difficult to put on a good-sized show because of hotel rooms and the
Football.
Go Gators. However, we just did homecoming. We just had a show this past weekend, and it was homecoming weekend, and there seem to now be enough hotel rooms that it wasn't such an issue, except for the pricing, of course.
Good point.
And because the football seasons change every year, they don't fall, the home games aren't on the same weekend every single year. We kind of run into being able to build that one show that's going to really be a big show that you can count on, because you have to keep flip-flopping your dates around. So the fall's a little bit lighter. But I did want to say that we understand, if the county purchases this, that the county has priority over their activities and what they want to do with the facility, and that the horse shows would have to kind of work around their dates.
And
So,
dates are, they can be moved around to a certain extent.
once we know what the
And we
set
made that
schedule
point in
is.
the letter, so.
Yeah, and we can build the same weekend, the same, every year, we can really build these shows. So There was a day when we didn't have enough stabling at Canterbury. We used to have to bring in temporary stalls to host some of the shows. They were so big. And we'd love to get back to that again.
Don't go anywhere. Commissioner Coleman, are you?
I'm done.
Commissioner Farnsworth, do you have questions for the?
I do. You said
Glad you guys came
talking
tonight.
about the amount of revenue it brings in. How much revenue does it bring in on a monthly basis
To the facility itself or in the area?
to the facility itself?
You know, I have a hard time answering that question because that's Mr. Weisman's personal information.
Okay.
And we're not employed by him. We lease the facility. So,
How much do you lease it for?
we've written him checks for a weekend anywhere from $4,000 to almost $20,000, depending on the size of the show.
It depends on the show.
Mm.
And the way you lease these facilities, number of stalls, are you leasing 2 rings, 3 rings, 1 ring?
Number of RV hookups,
number
how
of
much
RV
bedding do you
hookups.
sell?
So the producer gets a little piece of everything, but the
Right.
facility, and it's not unusual for us to go to Jacksonville or Ocala or here and, you know, write a $10,000 to $20,000 check for the use of that facility for a recognized show. But to answer your question, it's really hard to put in and say, you could average it out and say it brings in this much a month. But it's, you know, some months it brings in a lot and some months
Right.
it brings in very little. And we'd have to really go back into his books. Carly does do some assistant management out there still, just to kind of help out, because he's really been trying to run the place on a shoestring. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people jump ship, you know. But with the security, as I said, of it being there, you know, I think you're going to see a lot more income come in. But it's a very difficult answer for you.
Well, at $20,000 a weekend, it wouldn't take very long for the county to recoup their investment. It doesn't.
If you could
doesn't
do that
seem like-
every weekend,
Yeah,
yeah, but
and
it's,
that would be the
that's,
goal.
I'm not gonna,
That would be
I'm
the
not
goal.
gonna, you know, pull your,
There's a lot of horse shows out there. Canterbury's kind of
It
started
could
a,
happen.
it started a trend,
Mhm.
and people up in North Central Florida saw that there is a horse show industry. And we have since then seen other facilities open up, such as Jacksonville. They kind of
Right.
came to us, measured our arena, measured our stalls and
they
everything
actually
else.
asked us to be on their board and we
And
refused.
so now
but-
there is some competition, but there's also a lot more horse shows.
And there's another point I'd like to add, is that we aren't the only game in town anymore. But there's a lot of different size venues that are going to accommodate different size shows.
Right.
So it's not like a one size fits all. We wouldn't go to what they're building in Ocala to the Roberts with a lot of our shows. We would lose money. But Canterbury fits right in the middle there, and which is what makes it a very
Marketable.
marketable facility for people that are putting shows on our size. Okay, and so if it's, you know, if we were to do, say, the regionals, Canterbury wouldn't be big enough to do that. They don't have enough stalls. There's not enough room. You'd need 1,000 stalls, you know, and there's other facilities that can accommodate that kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have a pretty good feel for the,
I'm proud of my
Go ahead.
research here. Do you know that horse shows, now this is all in the southeast of life looking up. Do you know that the participants and the people that are there that go to these, of course, I know nothing about horses or any of this stuff. Do you know that it brings in more money than NASCAR?
Mm-hmm.
The people that come in? I was sitting there going, I can't
Especially
believe
during the
this.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want y'all to get that big.
Well,
You need to buy more land,
yeah.
build more stalls, more arenas.
Yeah,
But no, but yeah, I mean,
No,
that,
it absolutely
the goal
is
would
a
be
huge
to
industry.
maximize that facility and keep it full as much as possible.
well, I think we've done a good job of selling the county manager listening to you guys talk on why this is a good idea.
But we would, you know, anything we can do to help get this thing rolling. And
All right, we appreciate
Right.
it. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, so does the board have any questions about the contract?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Farnsworth.
This part here says the county shall have no obligation.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 6 of the old one. This new draft I haven't had an opportunity to review.
He's in paragraph E,
On page 6.
page 6.
Okay.
Section 5E. The county shall have no obligation to construct the extension office on the parcel until after the municipality conveys the lease or mutually agreeable substitute to the city. What would be that substitution?
Mr. Mayor, in the last few hours, we've come to understand that there is no agreeable substitution. The county says it's 5-acre parcel from Davis is it, and so they've made that a condition of this contract moving forward, and that's why we're moving forward to finalize that contract with Mr. Davis now. Go ahead and pull that together so that we can check that off as a contingency built into this contract.
In previous conversations, there had been some thought of going east or west. And I
That's
think that was the nations of that clause was it could be east or west, but I think we've all sort of consolidated around east.
There was also a possibility of going south.
Across the
Wasn't that
highway?
discussed?
No.
Not across the highway, more towards the front.
Closer to that one?
Oh,
Closer
just
to the-
pulling it south, yeah, and I think that's one of the in that 10% that we've still working on, is the 5 acres gonna be set back, is it gonna be up against the road? It's gonna be somewhere in that line, we just gotta finalize that.
It's going to be on the eastern boundary. It's just how far north or how far south on that boundary it's going to be.
Okay. And also, later on in that section, for the failure of either party to comply shall constitute a material breach of the agreement and entitle the other party to damages. Exactly what is that referring to?
If we fail to buy the 5 acres or the county fails to build the extension office there, is that right, Mr. Mayor? I don't wanna,
That-
I'm not a lawyer, so
That-
I wanna
that is
make sure
correct.
that's what.
One of the 15 bullet points that you guys asked us to convey as talking points was that, hey, if we're going to build $1 million, we kind of want to guarantee that the county's going to put the extension offices there. It's not just going to be the fairground facility. So the argument that it would be a breach that we could pursue is there to protect us. But by the same token, the county's making this investment anticipating that we're going to provide 5 acres so they can build the county extension offices. If we don't provide the 5 acres, then the county would consider that a breach, and they'd be able to pursue it.
Okay.
It's much more likely that the remedy would be specific performance and not damages, but that's a provision in the contract, so. In other words, if you do what you're supposed to do, no worries, but if you don't do what you're supposed to do contractually, then the other side can sue you for specific performance. Same goes with Mr. Weisman. If he signs his purchase sale agreement and doesn't perform, then one of the remedies the county would have is to sue him for specific performance. If we decided for whatever reason we just didn't want to buy the 5 acres, then we would be in material breach of this agreement.
And what would happen if after a 15-year period, the county decides to move the office building to a different piece of property?
They could. I mean, that's certainly within their remedy to do that, but there is a 99-year lease that they have under the agreement.
For $1 a year?
For $1 a year. I think the idea is that there is going to be not just the county extension office, but there's also going to be a convention center or meeting hall in that facility. Now, the city has the right under this agreement to utilize that premises on an occasional basis as well, so that'll be a part of our lease, I would anticipate.
But at any point in time in the future, they could move the office building out of there, office out of that area.
If they determined that the IFAS building would be better suited in some other facility, I think they would be entitled to do that.
But remember, it took us 30 years to get to this point, so
Yeah.
they're going to spend, I think, is they're ranking about $5 million they're estimating for this building or buildings. So
As long as they don't build a circular building, they probably won't move it.
No circular buildings.
Never know, depends on who's elected.
I believe that it would be actually probably more than that amount. We're talking, right now, the goal would be to build a 20,000 square foot building, 10,000 square feet of which would be community center space. So not just for class space for extension, but for community space, for
cultural
anybody in the
events.
community to rent or utilize. So, so it'd be IFAS extension offices as well as a community center attached to it. So it's a lot more than just an investment in a extension offices. And
Right.
our hope, of course, is that the Ag Tech Park is connected to that facility, so, you know, it goes along with that a lot more, and that's another reason why we would be staying in the facility.
I think we're all hoping for a nice symbiotic relationship between all those three. I also want to point out on the conference space, cultural classrooms, you know, part of our struggle in really attracting a hotel to the city of Newberry has been weeknight stays. Well, I'm sure Commissioner Hersom can speak to the fact that IFAS conventions generally are weekday events, not weekend events. So the more that we can encourage that center to be a draw, the easier it's going to be for us to sit down with hoteliers now and say, look, we've got Canterbury, we've got Gatorback, we have Champions, I'm missing one, all bringing to Easton, thank you, bringing people on the weekends. Now we also have a weekday draw. Now it's time to start believing. So for me, it's a big plus to the whole overall project.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Alachua County certainly lacks convention space off campus outside of Gainesville that is accessible to people, and the opportunity to have the meetings, conferences during the week, and then some proximity to hotel space would be an immense asset to the county itself, and certainly to Newberry. We would reap those rewards, but it is a challenge to have a conference outside of either the Hilton or the Union, because there's no other facility large enough to seat 300 people.
And Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
if I could
please.
add, the blackout period that was mentioned, the January to May, is actually in recognition of the fact, as they said, January to May is that busiest time period for an equestrian facility. We've recognized that that's the most profitable time period, which is why we have that as the blackout time period. Now, hopefully, we have great reservations for outside of that as well. But that's part of the recognition of that. We do want to recognize that that is one of their busier time periods.
We want you to be profitable. That's even more incentive to stay.
Don't go too
Commissioner
far. Don't go too
Farnsworth, were you done with your,
No, I got a couple more.
go ahead.
Another question for you.
I do too.
I'll just stay for a minute.
Ms. Manager, I was curious if there was anything that our staff hasn't been telling us that you thought was
Well,
important
that's a
for us
very
to be
loaded
aware of.
question. Now, I think the bottom line is that what we've tried to structure is that I think you all have made very clear what you're looking for here. Our commission has made clear that they're hoping to achieve that as well. But in respect of the agreement, if something happens where, because of some action of the city commission, we can't follow through with what we want to see on the property, then we want to be made whole as the county. If, by the same token, what we've tried to build in here is that if the county does something, that we take away the expectation of what you have for what we do with the property, then you all are made whole. And then we have that third provision that if something happens that neither of us can control, then we'll share that burden. But, I mean, that's really the gist of it, is that, you know, we're going to put a lot of effort into it as well, and we just want to make sure that if something happens that we can't follow through with our expectations, that we're made whole.
Okay. And then one other thing, the flavor of the conversation has still and continues to include the youth and livestock still being within that January, trying to keep it kind of the same time frame that has been,
The youth fair?
because I know we're talking about the blackout dates. I
Yes.
just want to make sure
So the only
it
exception.
doesn't really apply.
Correct. The only exception to that is the month of March. That is when the youth fair happens, and that month of March will be tied up with youth fair. And that is the
Okay.
one commitment of the county. And I think we have conveyed that in some of the meetings that the county has had with the equestrian community,
Okay.
is
Great.
that issue on the month of March.
Great.
So to the extent that we can accommodate things during that period, we would. But that would be the only issue during that January to May timeframe is the youth fair.
Okay.
Other than that, all the other time periods would be open. And we do intend to put quite a bit of dollars into the property for upgrades that we know are needed to the property too. So that's also in our plans.
Well, if I forget later, I certainly appreciate everything that you have done to bring this relationship together. I feel like the city, since you have taken the helm, the city and the county have gotten a lot closer, and it probably shouldn't surprise me that Ag has kind of brought the two of us together, and I really, really appreciate your leadership over there and the feedback that we've been getting from the staff. It's been significantly, by far, more helpful than it has ever been, so thank you.
No, thank you, I appreciate that. Your staff makes it easy.
Commissioner Farnsworth, I think he
Okay,
still has
before
a
you sit down-
question
I'm not
for you
done.
as well.
Okay, sorry.
Do you have any idea what kind of rates you'll be charging for the use of the facility?
I don't. I can't say that at this point in time. We would probably look at what the investment is and how long we want to take to kind of even break even. I can give you kind of an estimate of what we charge today for our current fairground site. I know that we charge, I think it's somewhere around $1,000 on the weekend and half price during the week for the total facility at the fairground site. I wouldn't quote me on that. I think that's about what we charge. But I don't know with all the investment we're going to make. I know we have to upgrade all to ADA, all the restrooms, et cetera. We've got a lot of improvements to do, painting, and a lot of things we're going to do on this site. So I don't know if that changes that. And then, of course, as we've heard, the equestrian, the way that operates is a little different, how those are charged. So we'll have to take a look at that.
And also, out of curiosity, did you know the size of the building that's on the current fairgrounds?
You mean the auditorium that's
Yeah,
currently there?
Yeah, we had to kind of go through everything to get to the fairgrounds.
Yeah, I think it's about
He's not
20,000
talking about
square
20,000?
feet. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's about 20,000.
Do you know if the county has any intention of building something of that nature in that area?
In the current fairground?
No, in the Canterbury area.
No.
Okay.
No, we would, the hope is to utilize that's part of the reason why we need to add to the extension spaces, because they do need exhibit space that they utilize for the youth fair. They do use interior exhibit space, so we do need that. But if you've been to the youth fair, you see that they do not utilize the entirety of that auditorium. They don't even use half of it when they set things up on the interior, so that would be plenty for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Herson.
Just one final question, since we're getting into the weeds, I might as well join the fray. So there's current stall rental going on at Canterbury. Do you anticipate will that be allowed to continue once the county takes possession?
I don't think we've really discussed that or on how we would handle that, so I can't really answer that at this point in time.
I think we gotta get this deal done, and then we can answer a whole lot of the questions that have been kind of thrown around here tonight. So, are there any more questions about the contract?
Yes.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
This is on my page 5, so section 5, letter D, regarding the connection of the infrastructure to
It's
the
on page
facility.
6 of the new one, yes. Okay.
Is there a time frame that will be completed?
Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, that's anticipated that that will be completed with all other construction that the county performs on the site as part of their site plan. Matter of fact, our plan is that it would be part of their site plan and that we would simply pay the bid cost to perform that and not let it be work independent of their other work.
And where will that money come from to pay for that, sir?
Two funding sources, the cap charges, capacity charges, as you know, cannot be waived. So our general fund would be covering those capacity charges. The rest of the funds would come from our enterprise funds, water and wastewater.
And do you have an estimate of how much that would be?
Yes, sir. We anticipate the total is, I have it in the 140. Thank you. The total's 140. A component of that, the largest component of that is cap charges and, or maybe 50/50 cap charges and construction cost.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on the contract in front of you? Yes? No? Okay.
In answer to Commissioner Farnsworth's questions about rent, you'll note that the Ag Center is rented to the municipality on a rent-free basis during the periods of time that we're going to be renting it. And if it's scheduled to be reserved by someone else, we're on a first-come, first-served basis, but if it's not being utilized, then we can again use it on a rent-free basis. So that's built into the contract.
That's still in the contract. Do we get it rent-free?
Right. The other point that I wanted to make is that we anticipate that the zoning approvals will be completed within probably 6 months. We're building a 9-month time frame for closing as per the contract with a $50,000 contingency fee. And then there's an additional period, I think it's another 3 months for another $15,000. So there's a potential that we will add on another 3 months for another $15,000. Again, that would be a non-refundable portion of the contract. It goes to the credit of the overall $1 million we're putting into the deal.
Commissioner Martin.
Mr. Attorney, above and beyond the 10 days, should we exhaust those free days, is there something in the contract of a, do we get a preferred rate beyond that, or is that beyond the scope of this contract?
No, we had proposed that in an earlier draft.
Okay.
Since we couldn't really think of uses
Okay.
within inside the free days, it seemed like an easy point to let go, and there was some feeling on the county commission about how much our donation should be worth in perpetuity. So that was sort of in the compromise position.
Thank you.
And rent-free is defined as that the county waives its proprietary fees charged for the use of the facility. The municipality, city will be responsible for all other costs for use of the facility. So that's the definition of what rent-free is.
Okay,
And that's only for a 10-day period per year.
correct. Outside the blackout period, we have 1 day inside the blackout period, 1 day in there. Now, if it's a county-run event, and there has been some conversation that the city and Newberry could partner for Westfest. Westfest is really the only event that we can really conceptualize that we might want to do there at this point in time. And the county is open to continuing talking about that as well.
Mr. Mayor, I'd point out that the blackout period only applies to the agricultural center, to Canterbury. It does not apply to the community/conference center component of the project.
Any other questions from the dais on the contract in front of you? Okay, now I know we were working on the wording of the zoning process right up into the end, so I don't think we have put copies of the contract out for the public, but we would certainly be willing to talk about any of what you've heard here tonight, any questions about the project, the concept as a whole. Now would be an appropriate time for I'm sorry, we don't have a motion on the floor, do we? Okay, staff, did we come up with a recommended motion?
Mr. Mayor, the recommended motion would be for the appropriate city officials to enter into the interlocal agreement between Alachua County and the city of Newberry for the purchase of the Canterbury Equestrian Center for use as the county's agricultural center.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Okay, so now is the time for public comment. If you listen to anything tonight, you interested in the project, you have any questions about it, now's the time to ask those questions.
Really, you're gonna call me out like that? Do I gotta get
You got to get up, you got to introduce yourself. We need your social security number, credit card number.
I'm Kevin Henderson. I'm the swine chair for the Alachua County Youth Fair. The only thing I really noticed, y'all pay a lot for an acre of land, but also you were talking about hooking up city sewer and water. I'm sure because the growth of people that will be visiting Canterbury, sewer will be nice, but city water for animals is not the best
Award-winning.
idea.
Award-winning.
Yes.
Award-winning. City of Newberry Water, cleanest in the north.
No. I'm just saying for an animal, chlorinated water is not the best. Yeah, they get the scours.
Hang
at
on one
best.
second. I
mean,
believe
don't
we
know
may
if it
have
does the same thing for horses, but
An answer to that question right here, Mr. Manager.
but I didn't know if that was like set in stone or if they can stay on a well or.
The site currently has a well, and it's our anticipated, we hadn't, anticipation, we haven't mandated it, but that the county would continue to use the irrigation well for many activities, wash down, watering livestock, those types of things. I don't think they'd want to pay our utility water rates to wash down horse stalls and things of that nature. So we anticipate that they would keep the irrigation well in place for those types of uses.
Okay. That was it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, for having me. My name is Scott Costello. I'm a candidate for Alachua County Commission, and hopefully, as of tomorrow night, I will be your newest county commissioner. I don't have a question, but I do have a statement that I'd like to say. Past relationships with the county may not have gone as fluid or as positive as you would have liked. I think this is an example of what the future should hold. You've got a county manager who's worked aggressively and cooperatively with the city manager and staff, and hopefully this is the first of many steps. This is a project long overdue. I am 100% in support of this project moving forward and looking forward to city and county relations continuing to grow and not necessarily taking the length of time it's taken, what'd you say before, 30 years so far now? But I think that this is a great opportunity for the city, for the county, and for the residents, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we're able to do together going forward.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Okay, hearing none. Commissioner Coleman?
There's,
It's just a button. Just push
there's
it.
2 wells on the place. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wash racks, so, but there's 2 wells. Huh?
So you're,
So, okay.
okay?
I don't know if that mattered, but look it up.
We appreciate it. Any other questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. And we are to comments. City Manager,
I have no comments, Mr. Mayor.
City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, I want to introduce to you Andrea True. Andrea, if you want to come up for a second, she's a young lawyer in Gainesville and has an interest in local government work. And in keeping with us being lawyers, I'd like to put a young lawyer on the spot to
you for
introduce
that.
herself.
Hi, I'm Andrea True, and like Mr. Walker said, I'm a newer attorney in town in Gainesville. Been practicing for 3 years, and this is my first commission meeting, and it's been a pleasure. So it's been nice to meet all y'all and hear your comments and see what's going on.
I caught that. Well done. Well done.
What did I do? I do. It's
Oh, y'all. I'd hire her right now.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Andrew.
Welcome. Madam Clerk? Thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
Nothing. I'm just, well, I'm very excited, and I'm so glad that, I hope tomorrow shows that we're in, you know, a real good partnership with the county.
Thank you. Commissioner Herson?
You know, Canterbury is a nationally recognized facility. As somebody in my family that travels around the country in the equine circles, sometimes uses the word town Newberry, they don't recognize it, but they will recognize Canterbury Equestrian Show Center, show place. So I believe we've got a great partnership with the county, opportunity to keep putting Newberry on the map and make Alachua County look good and remind us that agriculture is an important lifeblood for North Central Florida.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Martin?
Just reiterate that I probably shouldn't be surprised that agriculture is one of the things that has really brought the city and the county together. I look forward to the future relationship moving forward. And Ms. Lieberman, if I can just one more pitch as far as the people who are currently in place at the facility. You know, they know what they're doing, and I would encourage you, any opportunity you have to engage them to do so. Moving forward, the Canterbury is Canterbury because of the Evans family and because of Lee, really is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll run through these really quick, but I want to remind everybody that on November 13th, City of Newberry and Big Daddy Productions are hosting a charity concert for hurricane relief victims. It'll be at Newberry High School on the football field from 6 to 8. Bring in a relief item, you bring in a cash donation, we'll make sure we get it all up to the Panhandle. So November 13th, you can hear Josh Taylor's brand new song, Hometown Strong. It's a tearjerker. Let me just prepare you for that. On November 17th, we're hosting the second annual Mayor's Masters. That money is actually all being donated to a local veterans organization called Tin Can, who has spent the last 3 weeks up in the Panhandle volunteering. So this would be a great opportunity to show your thanks and gratitude. Sponsor a hole. Come bring a team. It's a scramble. If you want more information about that, I'll get it to you. Also on November the 17th, it is our largest ever Main Street Festival here in town. So it's going to be huge. I think they're up to 96 vendors at this point in time. So if you're driving through Newberry on the 17th, it's going to be a busy day. And on November 18th, it's our second Truth and Reconciliation event. I've asked all the pastors in town to blanket the city with a message of brotherly love, community, forgiveness, kindness, hope, tolerance, and then invite all their congregations to Lois Fort Park so we can all break bread together in fellowship at the park. I want to thank Christian Life Fellowship for providing all of the food for that event. So it's free. We'll start serving the food at 12:30. Come, sit, eat, talk, share memories, experiences, and all of those kinds of things. Finally, I just want to thank this board. It has been a long process since the summer meeting where the county voted to bring these activities out here. But with everyone's tolerance, with everyone's vision, everyone's foresight, we've able to we've able to make it here tonight. I want to thank our staff. And as well the county staff. I would echo Commissioner Martin's words that you are a breath of fresh air. Ever since you came on board, our relationship has blossomed, and it has been a partnership instead of antagonistic. And we've always worked for solutions instead of identifying every possible problem that could maybe arise. And this is a great example of it, because we have not let any problem stand in our way. We set out to save Canterbury, and that's what I believe we're going to accomplish tomorrow night, starting at 5 o'clock. So please tune in then. And with that, public comment. Madam Public.
Amy DeLucio, citizen. This Wednesday at 1:30 at our Newberry Fire Department, the community is invited to come out and celebrate our Arbor Day celebration, and we're going to plant a 30-foot tree.
Ooh, man, I'm glad I'm not digging that hole.
Me too.
I did it last year now. I did it last year. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.